too. Ford. Go further. Terms and conditions apply. See Ford.ie for details.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Out to Cahill, long ball, skinning the top of the stick. Out to Shane O'Morey releasing the ball across to the far side to Patch Collins high, dropping. It's over the bar. Once again, Patch Collins sending that one straight over the bar. A brilliant ball from the back, once again by Shane O'Morey. The clock, 74 minutes. Out to the middle of the field. Ball comes out to Tony Kelly, trying to get the ball away, trying to get the ball on the ground. Sides are level. 121 apiece. Ball coming out. Shane O'Donnell getting the ball into Peter Duggan. Going inside. A shot. He sends it over the bar. Peter Duggan at the edge of the square, sending the ball over the bar. Once again down here outside on the far side of the field. We don't know what's happening here, but absolute excitement of
30 seconds.
Clare lead by a point. You have to win this ball as it drops in. Jack over it. Pedro O'Connor coming out with it, driving the ball down to the far side of the field.
Chase it.
Dropping down, Pauling Maher. Ball dropping in inside. Picked up out there to the far side of the field. Still trying to get the ball away out to the far side of the field. Bring it forward.
Keep it in play.
And back the ball goes across. Peter Duggan sends it over the bar. The boys round on the sideline, sending it in, sending it over. 75 minutes on the clock. The ball is poked out fast out to this side of the field. It's over. And Clare have won the Munster Championship game here in absolutely dramatic couple of moments here.
Well, radio at its best there. Still O'Connor and Clare FM with Tommy Guilfoyle on backing vocals. Amazing moment for Clare. Devastation for Tipperary, who bow out of the Munster Championship 2018. And you have to go back to the 8th of June 1998 for the last time Tipperary bowed out so early in the championship. We have Jamesy O'Connor on the line and Tommy Dunn as well, All-Ireland winners both. Jamesy, I think Sil and Tommy Guilfoyle about captured your feelings there.
They did, yeah. I was in the stand actually, just right behind where John Conlon and Peter Duggan got those two late points from the sideline, and it was a special day in Thurles, Joe. It was just a magical match again. I mean, we've no right to expect these games and this drama to keep unfolding, but it did. And I think the manner of the way in which both teams went at it yesterday. I mean, Tipp were heroic. Like fourth week on the trot. Even you take someone like Callan, who. He certainly wasn't at his best. He probably didn't have the game time in his legs or that sharpness. But I mean, the way he fought for the cause yesterday and chased down every ball, and that happened all over the field. And I think, if anything, for Clare, it made it more special, given the way the Tipp fought and the way they left it all out there. And there was a great picture on the front page of the Times and in the Examiner of Pat O'Connor, and Callan, and I just thought it captured the spirit in which the game was played. And again, I don't want to be misty-eyed or anything about it, but it was a hugely important game for Clare and the Clare supporters, and most importantly, the Clare players and management. And to win it in the dramatic style that they did, meant it was a great day to be a Clare supporter on Thurles yesterday.
Yeah, Tommy, a strange one for Tipperary supporters and for management and Michael Ryan, who spoke himself of being actually happy with the performance. This was kind of the first performance that he was relatively happy with, and yet there is the obvious devastation at the campaign ending so early. And we did still see some of the same old Tipp failings from the previous 3 weeks, not least in that full back line. I think the word panic was used at times when ball went in there. So it was a kind of muddled afternoon for Tipperary, who could so easily have won that game.
Yes, I think Tipp will feel that it was a game that they certainly could have won and possibly even should have won. But I think it was Tipp's best performance out of the 4 games. It wasn't a perfect performance, but I thought it was a much improved performance. I thought their defence was a good bit better, and we were much sharper up front, and was the first time this year we've been able to build up a bit of a lead and build a bit of momentum. And some of our long ball kind of strategy did have the Clare defence under a bit of pressure, and Billy McCarthy scored a great goal from a long puck out. But it was a game, you could feel it. tension and the drama, just the tension in the ground throughout the game from the supporters, where every puck of the ball just mattered so much to both teams. It was incredible to be there, and it was the complete opposite from a Tipperary perspective at the end of the game, just the devastation of it. And because the team fought so heroically, it's devastating to be out of the championship. It was an all or nothing clash, effectively.
Yeah, you're talking about the finest of margins. I mean, the Ian Galvin goal 18 seconds after Morris hits the post, and that was to go 7 clear for Tipperary in the 68th minute. I mean, that will keep anybody up late at night, not least Michael Ryan, when you think about just the fineness of that margin. Ryan actually interestingly said that this experience will impact, he said, how we view the league going forward. From my perspective, no way can we continue to try and do what we were trying to do this season. These guys are not machines, and seem to be including the month of April there, which was set aside for club matches, and that did happen in Tipperary, and 8 matches in the league as well, all contributed to a fairly epic season in a way. It is noticeable that they wilted at the end of both halves yesterday, Tommy. Where does fatigue come in?
Oh, I think it's certainly in. I mean, I think if you go back to the first game, Joe, and the intensity and the ferocity of the Tipp Limerick game, and all the Munster Championship games that we've seen, I thought really as the Munster Championship went on that you would see, I couldn't see how the intensity of all the games would stay at the level we've become accustomed to in recent years. But the fact that, as far as I can see, it almost increased. It's just unbelievable. So my own view on it is, I think even 3 Sundays in a row is too much for players to be put through. I just think it's way over the top. And I'm not talking about it from a Tipperary perspective per se. I think the level at the speed and the power and the pace that these fellas have now through their conditioning work, many of them with 7 or 8 years of it in the bank, and the toll a championship match takes on a body. I played 7 or 8, 10 years ago, Jamesy, the same. You couldn't get out of bed for 2 days after a game in those days, and I can imagine what it's like now. So now I know they have recovery techniques and all that kind of stuff, but I just think it's too much for players. Now, it's unbelievable if you're in the stand watching it, but from a playing perspective, it's just absolutely severe. So fatigue is a factor, but sometimes, the heart rules the head, and I think Tipp just pulled a huge performance out of the bag yesterday. Everything was on the line, from their season was on the line. So, but the tanks were probably half empty, but they just found a way to get a performance. But Michael's comments are interesting, and he had said that from the very start of the season, that he wasn't sure how it was going to work out. They got the short straw a little bit with 4 Sundays in a row. That's certainly not an excuse, and he didn't offer it as an excuse. But it was a tough ask, and the April month was respected in Tipperary. All those fellas played at least 2 championship games with their clubs, and some of them 3.
Okay. So beyond that though, Jamesy, if Tommy understandably has a bit of heart involved with the head here, something was never quite right with Tipperary. I mean, they arrived into this championship season with question marks and issues, key players. I mean, there's only so much you can do about injuries, and you kind of feel like if Callan had another few weeks or another month or 2, he'd bubble along very nicely come the business end. But they had issues with players and injuries, and their defence, there was chopping and changing. They never improved, Tipperary, Jamesy, to the requisite standards consistently. So what was the big issue there? What went wrong, so badly wrong, with Tipperary this year?
Well, I think, and Tommy alluded to that, Michael Ryan probably flagged this, well ahead of the championship. With obviously Tipp committing to playing club championship matches, in April. Clare didn't play any championship matches in April. Now, I know the guys played maybe league games with their club, but it's not the same thing. And, particularly players from dual clubs, and Tipp, when the league final, Clare were out at the quarter-final stage and had probably a couple of weeks, inactivity there when the lads were able to take a couple of weeks off. Tipp went all the way to the final, and I definitely think in hindsight, if Michael Ryan had it over again, okay, maybe the club thing was out of his control, but was it in Tipp's interest, to go to the league final? And then I suppose to lose in the manner they did to Kilkenny was probably a big setback as well. But also, Cathal Barrett wasn't right for the first match. Callan was just back, didn't start. Brendan Maher didn't start. Bonner didn't start. We only saw Barrett, and certainly he gave them energy and an infusion of it the last couple of matches when he came on and started yesterday. So, it wasn't as if he ever, I think, had his maybe strongest team in the field. And even yesterday, he lost Dan McCormick early on. Brendan Maher, went off when Clare got the goal. And he ran, 66 whatever minutes were in, Joe. He made a 50-metre run as flat and as hard as he could go to try to intercept Podge and hurt himself. And they lost him for the crucial 5 minutes as well. So it wasn't Tipp's year. And I think, Peter Duggan, the free count yesterday was probably on the high side. They never really had a settled full back line. Pádraig Maher again was in the edge of the square late on John Conlon. And still, Joe, as you said, they were the width of a post away from, having probably an opportunity to maybe rest for, 2 or 3 weeks and get the energy levels back up. And then they're a ferociously dangerous team, coming into the quarterfinals. But they're the margins. And as Tommy said, the intensity levels in all the games has been incredible. And it's been an absolute treat for hurling supporters and hurling people. And people are energised by it. People want to go to these matches now. When Clare and Limerick is sold out already.
Yeah,
people can't get tickets to Ennis today, which is incredible. And what a success it's been.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And what a time to, I guess, in a sense, trial this round robin series when things are so open in Munster and there's such a sense of equality across the 5 teams. It's been really amazing. On Michael Ryan's future, Tommy, he said himself, it's premature. Any decision that we make on that will make them in the cold light of day. Never any good decisions made immediately after a match, be it a win or a loss. To what extent will there be recriminations in Tipperary for Michael Ryan, Tommy? I presume, will he make the decision totally himself? Will he be under pressure to go? What's the atmosphere down there?
I wouldn't think that there's any appetite for a change in management, Joe, genuinely, unless Michael decides that he wants to do it himself for personal reasons. But and I don't think that will be the case. And I certainly look, Tipp haven't won a championship game, so there will be a seriously hard look at the whole operation, and I'm sure there'll be their own internal stuff that they'll want to look at and see how they can tweak things. But I don't see that as being, if Michael wants to continue, I don't see it as being any sort of an issue. I think if they have a happy camp, they have a panel of players where it's impossible to keep everyone happy, and I think it was just one of those seasons. But there are issues. There are certainly issues. From a Tipp perspective, are we getting enough players through out of that successful minor team in 2016? But I think that one of the most interesting aspects of it, I find, is how the National League will be treated by teams from now on, particularly in the Munster Championship. And Jamesy made the point there. It looks now as if Tipp would have been far better off had they not got near a league final this year, which is no one wants to be treating any competitions as secondary. But the reality of it was, Michael all along, I think, used the league to freshen up the team. And everything was going fine until Kilkenny gave them a pacing in the league final. But the reality is now, is the league actually a true barometer of where you're at and where you can judge players? And I think this year for Tipp, they got to the league final and were left with more questions than answers after the league final, and with little or no time to repair them as the players go off to play club championship for a month. Yeah.
So James, you mentioned Ennis, which is just going to be phenomenal. We're sold out. It's effectively a Munster semi-final between Clare and Limerick, and we saw what Clare did to Waterford, 221 to 116 in the end. We're almost conditioned to be disappointed when you hear that Limerick could be bolters or do something in the championship. But they're delivering, they're answering all the questions. Dahi Regan was there for us yesterday. He came away really, really impressed with them. They're a big team as well for a young team, after Galway, they kind of look like the biggest team around. And even Derek McGrath was saying, these lads are the real deal. So Limerick are, in some respects, the story of the Munster Championship from a positive point of view thus far.
Yeah, they probably are, and I was listening to Dahi eulogising about them on the way home from Thurles. Listen, he has probably more depth, John Kiley, available to him than arguably anybody else, because I was talking to Gary Kirby on Friday, and he was saying you Peter Casey, Barry Nash, and Kevin Downs are fighting for a spot on the panel, on the bench. You
Right.
know, like you nearly have assumed that at least one of those guys would have been on the team last year, and they, you know, they found players, I think, during the league, particularly Seamus O'Flanagan, you know, Gallan, that in a part of the field that they needed to find them. And they have a big half forward line, they have a big half back line, and when you have Derek McGrath, I mean, Watford are no shrinking violet, are a big physical team themselves. When you hear Derek, you know, referring to their physical prowess, well, then you know that, look, at this is a seriously physical team. And you know, even through the league, they went up to Salt Hill and you know, beat Galway in effectively the promotion decider. From coming back from a position where the game looked to be over, they did the same to Clare in the league quarter final. I mean, Clare probably should have put them away in normal time and in extra time. And I think, you know, those results, Joe, has really, you know, developed a resilience. Look at it. Kylie's a top-class manager. Paul Kinnerk is a top-class coach.
Yeah.
And they're building something there and have been building something. You know, it's on firm, good foundations. The academy structure is working. There's a lot of good, positive things in Limerick. The universities obviously have been at the forefront of the Fitzgibbon. So, yeah, listen, they're a coming force, and there's no question about it. I mean, Clare have a big task in their hands, you know, on Sunday. But it's one they'll relish. And you know, this Clare-Limerick rivalry, Joe, believe me, is every bit as intense as it is between Tipp and Kilkenny, or between Tipp and ourselves.
Yeah, well, give us an insight into that, because even when the draw was made, before we realised how beautifully the whole thing would culminate, even before the games had taken place, people were talking about this Limerick-Clare game in Ennis. Yeah,
well, we were certainly hoping in Clare that, please God, you know, the Limerick game will matter. You know, because like I made my debut in 1993, Joe, against Limerick in the championship in Ennis. You know, and I obviously have warm memories from that day. But we haven't met Limerick in the Munster Championship in Ennis, you know, since that time. And that's 25 years ago. And, you know, we met them down in Thurles last year, and there might have been 20,000 there, and the place felt empty. You know, it would be packed to the rafters on Sunday, and they're playing for a big prize, a place in the Munster final, and neither of them will want to take a backward step. And, you know, there'd be a great buzz around Ennis, and we haven't had that. And there was a great buzz around, you know, around Kilkenny, you know, on Saturday night. And I think that's one of the other big successes of the new format, that, you know, the local economies are benefiting and crowd numbers are up, and the thing is just it's energised, I think, the whole hurling community. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to it, because you know, it would be great. I mean, it's the ideal scenario for a Clareman, Joe. You know, you knock Tipp out one week, and you know, if you could cut Limerick off the knees when they're really rolling the week later, that's about as good as it gets for a Clareman.
Tommy, how do you see it going in Ennis?
It's very hard to call. I think Limerick's form maybe is a bit more consistent, and I think Limerick have a bit more physicality than Clare might like. But the fact that it's a home game for Clare will mean something. So I'd probably have a slight fancy for Limerick. Limerick haven't been going as well in a long time, and look to have a lot of tools at their disposal that they can use. And it'll be an interesting insight now, because both teams are going well, and that's what's going to make the game very special. But I probably fancy Limerick slightly.
Yeah, Jamesy, what's your head telling you?
My heart is telling me Clare, but again, I think on like Limerick were so impressive yesterday. I mean, you know, 2-14, I think 7 points at the half the game was over, and you know, they have a lot of momentum behind them, and you know, there was a big crowd yesterday. I mean, there was 23,000, and probably 20 of those were Limerick supporters, and they travelled in numbers to Cork, and there really is a feeling that you know, they're on a journey here. I think Limerick would be favourites, to be honest with it, Joe, and I'm not trying to big them up or anything like that. I think if it's going to be hard to call. I think Clare will bring a massive effort, and Clare will take huge confidence out of yesterday and the manner of it. And obviously it was a must-win game for them, but to do it and keep their nerve at the depth, they have to feel really good about themselves, and home advantage will certainly be a factor. But I think Limerick will be favourites, and I think that's deservedly the case. Yeah,
it's one of those scenarios again where kind of nothing is surprising us right now. Before we nod off for the evening, Kilkenny Wexford at Nolan Park was obviously another topsy-turvy kind of game, an amazing game. And actually interesting in the context here, David Fitzgerald speaking to Ushin about the way Wexford faded. Malachy Kirkin made the point on his Out of Time podcast, and I hadn't fully realised it, that when they do look at the format here, quite often the team who are in their fourth week are playing it against a team who've had a rest, which is exacerbating the situations. They could probably look at the sequencing of some of these games, if nothing else. It seems like the Tipperaries of the world, for instance, are playing teams who've had a rest, and that's another disadvantage. So Wexford were in that boat. Here is some of Davy. He was speaking with Oisín Langan, and again, he's talking about how Wexford started strongly and then faded, and in Davy's opinion as well, the referee didn't help.
In the first half, you seemed to bamboozle them a bit. You seemed to, I'll use the term out-tactic, if that's such a term. You seemed to confuse them with what you did and how you did it.
Listen, some of the moves we had in the first half was incredible. Like, the only thing that kept them in the game was a few easy frees they got. That was fact. There's no point saying otherwise. That was the reason they were in the game at half time. We knew we needed to hit this hard and get up as early as we could, because we always thought we might slacken in the end of it,
You mentioned some of the frees there. I just heard you speaking to the print guys. You weren't particularly happy with some of the decisions there. Would you care to shed a bit more light on that?
Well, you were at the game. What did you think? Like, did you not think in the first half that they were handy enough on one side?
It didn't jump out at me. Look, I'm a neutral here tonight. It didn't jump out at me.
Well, have a look at it again and see where we got our frees. See, did we get many inside the 65? Just have a look at it and have a good look at it and see was there one or two things that are very punishable done, because they were done right in front of us and they weren't executed. And I can tell you there were serious enough things. Yet he could go down to the umpire and disallow a point, and they're saying Paul Morris fouled your man. I wonder what happened right before it. It's very hard to take that. We lost by 1 point today. Now let's say this straight out. I admire Kilkenny because they'll fight to the end, and I have no problem with Kilkenny because they're hurling people and they'll give it 110%. Not one bit cross at them, and I'd say fair play to them. They'll give you 110%. No problems with that. So I don't. But a good reader of the game that can study the game will see exactly what I'm talking about in the first half, 100%.
What about the second half? How about the frees then? Because you got a few kind of inside or in or around your own 65.
Oh, we actually did get one or two around our 65, yeah. We didn't get them in much further, did we? Have a look at the other side.
Yeah. Was there anything specific that wasn't being called that you saw?
I know it. I saw it. I'm not going to say it, but it's very fucking hard. It's very hard, and all I'll get is you're giving out again. I'm not giving out. I'm only saying it as it was. You lose by a point. It's very hard to take. Point disallowed, a few things. It's tough, but you know what? That's the way it is, and we'll bounce back and see what the story is.
Now, you wanted to get to a Leinster final. That's not happening. You're in the championship still. You're going on to a preliminary quarter-final. Where do you think you're at going into that game? Where do you think you're at after the championship so far?
I think we're up there with anyone. I think it's dangerous meeting either Carlow or Westmeath. I think that's dangerous. So I do. But if we get a break, we'll compete. We'll give anyone a go for it.
And it looked like desperation stuff, and then the whole thing turned. Jamesy, did the referee jump out at you? Obviously we were watching events at Navan progress, so we didn't get to see a lot of that first half, which seemed to exercise Davy in particular, but did the referee jump out to you, Jamesy?
No, I hand on heart, I can't say I did. Now look at, you go back and look at it, maybe you'll see bars and things here and there, but for me Wexford were excellent in the first half. I mean, they had Kilkenny in a lot of trouble. I mean, you're saying, how are Kilkenny going to break them down? I mean, for me, Kilkenny had I think 7 or 8 wides by half time.
Yeah,
and Richie Hogan just couldn't buy a score. Fennelly made no impact, and when Wexford went 9 clear, they got the first 2 scores after half time.
Yeah.
They really, what killed them from there to the end, Joe, was just the wides. I mean, they shot 16 or 17 wides. I think Tipp had 7 yesterday. And there were 9 points clear. Kilkenny got a couple of scores. Wexford then have a wide. Kilkenny got another couple of scores. Wexford missed a free, have another wide.
Yeah.
And suddenly a lead that should be maybe 6 or 7 points is down to 3 or 4. And the Kilkenny crowd were getting behind them, and they just couldn't, I suppose, really get a chance to stop that momentum. And when the wide count is in double digits, you're in trouble. And I think they finished with 17. And to me, that's where the game is lost. They missed a couple of those long range frees that Jason Ford and Peter Duggan were probably nailing, and Thurles TJ was nailing them at the other end for Kilkenny. But all in all, I mean, it was a sea change from the Wexford we saw 7 days previously against Galway. David Dunn had a brilliant first half. He gave them a lot of energy and pace around the middle third. McGovern, I think if they can get him back, they'll now have 2 players that they didn't have last weekend that have genuine pace, and I think Croke Park will suit them. So, I think huge positives in the performance. They got much better displays from Chin, from McDonald, from Rory O'Connor. than they did, the previous weekend. And third place isn't a bad place to be.
No, I think that's emerged. People have seen the run they have and the break they have. And I guess final word to you, Tommy. Maybe the interesting question on the back of this Wexford-Kilkenny game is, if when these two meet potentially down the line in Croke Park and they've both had 2 or 3 weeks rest, who comes out on top then might be the interesting question for you.
Absolutely. Both of these teams will have a real say in where the All-Ireland ends up, Joe. That's my view on it. I don't think Davy is all that put out over not being in a Leinster final. After the 4 games, he'll have a fair idea of where he's at, and he'll be well able to tweak a few things. I don't think they have any major injuries, but I think it's like any team that's trying to make a breakthrough. If you're inaccurate and off the pace and you're missing frees, it just makes things so much harder. And I think that's where Limerick have made the gains this year. A team that are trying to make the breakthrough, their attack is functioning much more efficiently, and look where it's got them.
OK, lads, we'll leave it there as the season continues. Jamesy, thanks very much. Tommy Dunn, thank you. We will take a short break. Next hour, we're talking to Billy Joe Padden, who watched Mayo on Saturday in Limerick, and then he went up and watched Donegal the next day, who were very impressive as well. So we'll get to Billy Joe, and after 8 o'clock, we've got Matt Williams and Eddie O'Sullivan.
Off the Ball on Newstalk.
Bruce Betting are one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. Download the iOS app today to see why Bruce Betting are giving you more for World Cup 2018. Bruce Betting, your World Cup bookmaker. In store, online, and now on your phone. Please gamble responsibly.